items to reduce the cost of essential goods and utilities, ensuring that every family can thrive. We understand the financial strain that high prices of essential items place on our households. To address this, we will implement increased oversight and controls over the cost of essential food items. This will include implementing fair pricing control and transparency measures to ensure that any import duty cuts are passed on to all of us and not just to boost company profits. Expand the categories of essential goods to give more access to necessary goods for Bermudians. Supporting a food cooperative and community-based initiatives to encourage competitive, diverse, affordable options. Launching a digital grocery price tracker to promote transparency among major supermarkets. Reducing red tape and eliminating permit costs for street-side food vendors, farmers markets, and local producers. Diverting funds raised by the sugar tax to support the agricultural and fishing sectors, increase food production and distribution, and promote the 100% utilization of arable land. We will also reprioritize the Parks Department to be food focused, incorporating food production into select underutilized public spaces, food security, community gardens, and hubs. By strengthening food security, we can reduce the reliance on imports and keep prices stable. I now turn to Senator Fubler.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And so to start here, high utility costs are a significant concern for all of us. It affects our quality of life, the cost of doing business, and our ability to spend our hard-earned money on our family and our priorities. To address the high cost of utilities and enhance energy resiliency, the PLP plan includes amending Section 35 of the Electricity Act to remove or limit categories of recoverable expenses that allow BELCO to pass certain costs onto consumers. In short, this change will ensure fewer costs are recoverable, prioritizing affordability for Bermudians. Further empowering the regulatory authority to implement fair pricing on retail electricity tariffs, owning our own electricity generation that is not dependent on global oil prices. We must develop community solar programs to expand access to renewable energy alternatives for Bermudians. This will help to drive technology progression and economies of scale in this industry, which should result in more efficient, cost-effective solar generation systems while also moving us towards the Integrated Resource Plan's renewable energy mix goals. Reviewing and amending current legislation and regulations that require mandatory connection to BELCO to allow more diverse and independent energy generation without risk to electrical grid stability. And reviewing the retail tariff and feed-in tariff methodologies to continue to protect consumers from the extreme variations in international oil pricing. Adjusting the approach to calculating consumption rates, which is how much BELCO charges you, and generation rates, or how much BELCO pays you for your solar generation, will help to make them fairer for all Bermudians. At the end of the day, we understand that utility bills are painful. We will help to ease this burden while moving towards a greener Bermuda by promoting leveraging the sun and perhaps as well in the future, wind and sea to generate the electricity we need. We must own our electricity in the long run so that the price of our electricity in Bermuda is not dictated solely by the global price of oil and gas. By taking these steps, we are dedicated to easing the financial burden and environmental impact on Bermudian families. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the press. Good afternoon, Bermuda. Today, I address a critical component of the Progressive Labor Party's vision, strengthening free market competition through robust antitrust, fair competition legislation. Our goal is to create an economic environment where fairness prevails, innovation thrives, and all Bermudians benefit from a dynamic marketplace. Bermuda's economic framework currently lacks specific antitrust regulations governing business combinations. This absence creates the potential for conditions that could stifle innovation and place undue financial burden on our citizens. To address this, the PLP is committed to introducing comprehensive anti-monopoly legislation. This initiative aims to prevent market dominance by a few and promote a vibrant, competitive marketplace. Key components of our plan include, first, establishing a regulatory and competition authority. We will create an empowered body responsible for overseeing market practices, ensuring transparency, and enforcing fair competition standards. Second, implementing clear guidelines. Our legislation will define explicit criteria for mergers and acquisitions, and here we are talking with respect to local businesses, preventing the formation of monopolies and promoting a diverse business landscape. Third, protecting consumer interests. By fostering fair competition, we aim to enhance product quality, encourage innovation, and ensure fair pricing directly benefiting consumers. In this process, we certainly will be examining successful frameworks in other jurisdictions and examining how those could be adapted to Bermuda's unique context. In conclusion, our commitment to strengthening free market competition through anti-monopoly legislation is a testament to our dedication to economic fairness and prosperity for all Bermudians. By fostering a competitive marketplace, we pave the way for innovation, fair pricing, and a thriving economy that serves everyone. Your PLP team is committed to building a fairer Bermuda by easing the burden placed on you and saving you money. That's certainly why we need competition and a fair landscape. Thank you.
We'll take questions, please.
Good afternoon, Gary Foster Skelton, Bermuda Broadcasting. So my first question will be to Ms. Fubler, speaking on the PLP platform, saying that you will limit recoverable expenses that Belco passes on to customers. Now, what's the balancing act there? Because Belco currently has to maintain its capability to produce a base level of power for the island and the accompanying infrastructure. How do you reduce Belco's revenues and maintain that power infrastructure? Will you reduce the base level of power needed? Will Belco have to become a smaller operation, potentially affecting jobs? What's going to be the balancing act here?
So I think the specifics will be informed by the relevant technical officers, but my understanding of the structure is focused around the retail tariff being based on the capital investment, which is a fairly standard industry practice. You know, whatever you put into your network is used to calculate what your rate should be. And I think making sure that we take a balance that favors Bermudians around affordability is the right choice to take here. The current regulated return on capital investment is something like 7.5%. You can get the specifics through the RA. And I think for an inelastic product like electricity, that's more than enough of a return. I think we can agree on that. And so in this case, when everyone is feeling the pinch and people reporting, you know, the cost of doing business is too high, reducing electricity rates can help to accelerate the economy for all.
You've actually said something very, very similar to what Senator Douglas DeCuto said in response to this question. The idea that perhaps Belco is getting too high a rate of return. And essentially you're saying a PLP government would possibly lower that rate of return.
That is the goal by reducing the recoverables.
Okay, and so we'll look forward to Belco's response to these ideas as well. But you also said you will review legislation that requires people to be connected to Belco grid. Now, one, isn't going off the grid only possible for those who can afford the solar panels and the batteries to be able to be off the grid, essentially? And two, won't more people going off the grid put more burden on the electricity infrastructure on those who remain, whose bills will potentially go up to cover the losses. And that, again, could be working against any limitation you put on Belco's returns or recoverable expenses. So is there, again, you're looking at a balancing act here. It sounds like you could potentially.
You touched on a nuanced point, right?
Yeah.
And so especially in the retail space, the grid itself is fairly delicate. And so to experiment with more cutting edge renewable energy generation technologies, you have to be able to operate independently of that. One thing we have already is the utility sandbox that is provided for experimental, but by allowing for there to be a disconnect from the grid, you can use things that are not yet utility rated, as an example. And again, yes, a balance needs to be struck, and that point is something that I don't deny around there's not a one-to-one. As you increase renewable energy generation, the cost of running a traditional generator does not decrease in direct relation. But I think what we want to see here is a shift in the use of technology. Integrated Resource Plan's goal is upwards of 85% renewable energy for base load. And we're not going to get there if we're not providing opportunities for people to kind of push the boundary on what they're working with.
Okay. And then moving over to Mr. Simmons, talking about putting price controls in on certain items. Now, obviously, things like price controls can affect the idea of a free market economy as such. So just talk about when you say price controls, what kind of essential items are we looking at there? And essentially, would we be saying essentially certain items are going to cost the same in every shop?
Yes. So what you're asking me really is where are you going to get your savings? And this is the key, because when we originally looked at the essential items list and we first put in place the duty relief, our expectation was that it would be passed down. And so now putting in place the protections to ensure that it is passed down, we're looking at this essential basket of goods and looking and say, how can we expand this? And so that's the process of structuring, the process of doing now, building out that list, being able to expand it so it goes beyond the rice and the things that we've had there previously.
Okay. But obviously, the idea of a price control where a shop can only charge so much for an item, different shops have different overheads.
Yes.
And is that going to be taken into account?
Well, the thing is, remember, this is a collaborative process, and it's important. We don't want to kill the golden goose. What we want to do, make sure is the golden goose feeds more people at more affordable prices.
Okay. And then moving over to this, the idea, Ms. Wilkinson, Wilkerson, sorry, the antitrust legislation. This, and you mentioned another regulatory authority, essentially, setting up another regulatory authority over retail space, essentially, and that puts more regulatory burden, obviously, on the spaces. When there's regulatory burden, that increases cost. That cost in that space ends up sometimes coming over to the consumer. So talk about how big an organization are we looking at here when you're thinking of another regulatory authority specifically for retail space?
Thanks, Gary. And again, a nuanced question, and there has to always be a balance to be had. I think one of the things that we've heard, certainly on the doorstep, is that there's too much regulation, that there may be, burdens to doing business. So we are absolutely conscious of that. And so in building out what this new set of regulatory framework will look like, that has to be kept in mind. So the idea isn't to create an entity that is huge, where there are attendant costs simply to run it to save a few dollars. There is always a balance to be had, and we will be looking at that very carefully.
Okay. Would you agree that everything we're talking about here today is a little bit of, we want to do this thing, we're not really sure how we're going to do it?
I think Derek was the most important thing with platforms. Platforms are partially aspirational. And I think, as Misha referred to earlier, the devil is in the details, no doubt. But I think that what we know is that we're laying out a blueprint of where we want to go and what we intend to do. And as we get closer to the time, as we put more into the specifics, we'll be able to share those specifics. And if we're successful, you'll probably be hearing some specifics at the budget.
Okay. And that is a notable thing. We've got the budget coming up just around the corner. And one of those things, if you don't mind me asking a slightly off the topic question, one of those things that was in the platform was this commitment to stable public finances. Now, since the 2022 budget, the sinking fund, our savings that originally were for paying off debt and budget deficits, that's fallen from 223 million, now projected to be below 70 million in the next budget, according to the Fiscal Responsibility Panel report. Some of the reduction has been to pay off debt and budget deficits. But we know the law was changed last year, March, to allow money to be transferred to other funds, 30 million to the Mutual Reinsurance Fund to continue freezing the standard premium rate. Additionally, I understand 47 million has covered deficits in the government and employee health insurance. That's 77 million of our savings on healthcare. Then there's the contributory pension fund. Last two actuarial reports in 2017 and 2020 have both shown the fund being exhausted progressively sooner. 2044 was the best estimate in 2020. And the next report due, the 2023 report due in the next few months, will show the latest status. Now, this idea of we're waiting on this budget, but when it comes to stable public finances, that's what the PLP says they're committed to. Is there a risk of our future finances becoming unstable because we're spending our savings now and our pension fund may run out sooner?
My goodness, you sound like Dr. Kuda.
Well, that's the questions that they've asked, and it's legitimate for you to be able to come and give us some input on those questions.
Valid question, for sure. And when I talk to people on the doorstep about it, fiscal responsibility, it is important. But someone that I canvassed several months ago now, when I first started my way through constituency 30, said, I would have been upset if you took that 25 million surplus you found at the mid-year budget review and squirreled it away for a rainy day. People are hurting now, and we want to be able to provide relief and mental health support, because that's what we're hearing are priorities to the people. There will be ways to further address kind of shortages in the pension fund and the sinking fund, but when it came to standard health benefit, people getting health care, I think that is a higher priority than debt service. Yeah.
So thank you. I'm quite. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Gareth Finnegan from the Royal Gazette.
Hi, Gareth.
First question's open to anybody really. One thing you didn't touch on was affordable housing.
Next press conference. Can't give you everything.
Well, no, but it's tied in with the cost of living. I was disappointed that Mr. Richardson wasn't able to be here today, because yesterday he sent out a statement. Anthony Richardson sent out a statement, and he said that affordable housing is one of the ways of bringing the cost of living down. It's a key plank in the PLP's platform, and he then went on to he referred to the Bermudiana Beach Resort as an example of affordable housing that the PLP had sort of put through. But of course, prices for those units are going to be way out of reach for an awful lot of people. We're talking about $3,000 for a studio, $7,000 for a 3-bedroom apartment. I mean, is that the idea of? Is that the PLP's definition of affordable housing? Because if it is, then I think a lot of people will say that you're pretty much out of touch with the reality of what people are facing.
Thanks, Gareth. Certainly, the configuration for the Bermudiana Beach Club and the rentals now would not be affordable. We've not described it as affordable currently. So the
I think. Sorry to interrupt, Ms. Wilkinson, but I think Mr. Richardson did yesterday.
Right.
He said that was an example of affordable housing.
Yeah. So the vision is that the intention is that it could be affordable housing in the future, but the priority, as folks would have heard in the press conferences from Colonel Birch, would be that we're able to repay the debt for the project and make that project a viable one. What we're able to do for the future is to be able to use those units in a way that they can help to address the affordable housing crisis. But currently, so you're absolutely right. People would be saying, $3,000 or $7,000 a month is absolutely not affordable. And I agree 100%.
Okay, thank you.
If I can add.
Sorry.
It's important to also look at it on the macro scale by providing more capacity in those mid to higher range rentals. That opens up space in the lower income ranges of the rental market.
All right. Okay. Actually, Mr. Simmons, if I could, you at the start of this conference, you said that the platforms are in some ways aspirational, and just touching on something else that ties in with the cost of living or combating the cost of living is, of course, pensions increases. And that's in your platform. There's a guarantee that there will be increases for seniors every year. If you should you be victorious next week, then for the next 5 years or for the term of your government, there will be pensions increases. Can you really guarantee that?
Well, I would say this, the Minister of Finance can give you the specifics, but look at it like this. If you have a household and your wife or you lose your job and your commitment is to keep your children in school, you find a way. And I think that's where the commitment is. We find the way. And that, I think that's one of the things that really separates us is that if we have to cut somewhere else, if we have to do something else, it's not going to be with pensions. And I think that's the thing we're going to be lock stock on.
Okay. Staying with you, Mr. Simmons, actually, you talked about food security and various things that the government intends to do to increase food production on Ireland. No mention of vertical farming, which has been something that the PLP has touted, or the government has touted, for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, so that is an issue right now. There have been some challenges in that space. The minister responsible would speak more to it. But I think that right now we're looking at a wide range of options, and that's not to say that that will not be revisited in the future.
So it's off the table at the moment?
No, I'm saying we're looking at a wide range of options, and there's not ruling out revisiting in the future.
Okay. And again, open to all of you, but Ms. Wilkinson, you talked about having a thriving free market economy, but there are lots of things that the economic recovery plan that the government launched, I think it was March of 2022, so we're coming up for 3 years now, and there was something like 25, 30 initiatives there talking about getting new industries growing. And they haven't come off, have they? It's vertical farming is one, casinos is another, the shoreside fish processing plant. Here we are 3 years later, 4 years later, and there's no sign of them.
I think we have to be fair about what the economy has been post-pandemic, right? And to make a comparison of what kinds of businesses could have thrived had there not been the pandemic is really unfair.
Yeah.
So I think let's be forward-looking, but what we can say looking back is the amount of activity out of the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation for small businesses has been completely thriving. So we've seen increases in different types of businesses, not necessarily the ones that you've pointed out, but certainly we have seen increases. But I believe there are more entrepreneurs in this space now than we've seen in a very long time, and it's encouraging.
But I believe there are fewer Bermudians employed at the moment than there were pre-pandemic.
I don't think that is a fact. Fewer Bermudians employed, or you're saying employed in the entrepreneurial space?
No, just in general. I believe that's true. Perhaps I should have checked that before.
I actually can confirm that to be the current statistic. There are our numbers of employed in Bermuda right now are around 1,500 below, about 1,520 below the pre-pandemic 2019, and the majority of that, maybe 1,490, is our Bermudian share of the workforce.
Thank you, Gary. Anyway, just going on with that, it's I know that Curtis Dickerson, the former finance minister, his approach was basically the government is there to set up the environment for businesses to thrive and to grow, for the economy to grow. And yet it seems that you seem to be a lot more regulatory and sort of, you know, hands-on. And for example, there's the grocery store that I think it was announced a couple of months ago that the you know, government's intending on going into the grocery business. So do you think it's really that you are sort of taking a step back, or do you think you're actually moving in the other direction?
The government is not intending to go into the grocery business, right? To be fair, the announcement was about encouraging the space for cooperatives to grow. We're not experts in the grocery business. We have no intention of getting into the grocery business itself. But it is all about creating an environment where more businesses can thrive, and where cooperatives, which may be groceries or other sorts of cooperatives, can grow.
Okay, Ms. Wilkerson, Mr. Fabler, Mr. Simmons, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
if I may just add, we have got the Attorney General here now. I don't know if we're able to ask questions on other legal factors in the platform, such as restorative justice, etc., or would we be able to take that offline after the press conference?
Yeah, we'll take that offline. So what we're going
Thank
to be
you.
doing, we're going to be laying out aspects of the platform. So rather than preempt that, we will have a chat afterwards.
Sure.
I think you want to have a chat with me as well.
I do.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.